Alright, what is up guys? Welcome to June 1st, Pride Month. 2S, LGBTQ, NFAI++, and however many letters they want to throw onto there. But for this video, let's leave the politics aside. This video, I want to tell you guys why there's such a dramatic increase in the number of people that's coming out as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, okay? And this is not just happening in the human world. It's also happening in the animal world, okay? In this video, I'm going to connect all of the dots to kick off a Pride Month. So there's so much to talk about. This video is going to be long. So I want you guys to stay with me, and I'm going to break this down point by point. So the very first point, throughout history, there has always been way more man versus woman. And this is thanks to a biological phenomenon. I'm going to pull up this picture on the right. That's the simplest way to explain this. Every single female on Earth has two X chromosomes. Every single male on Earth has a X and a Y chromosome. So for any female out there, every single egg that's in her uterus all have X chromosomes. Women do not have any Y. The only sex that has the Y chromosome is the man. For all the guys out there, all the millions of sperms that's currently swimming in your ball sacks right now, roughly 50% are X sperms, and roughly 50% are Y sperms. So whenever a man ejaculates inside of a woman, if one of the X sperms manages to fertilize the woman's X egg, that's when you have XX. That's when the female gets pregnant with a baby girl. And in the other half of cases, where a Y sperm fertilizes the X egg, okay, that's when the woman becomes pregnant with a baby boy. So on average, there's a 5% higher chance of a Y sperm fertilizing the X egg. So on average, a woman has a higher chance of getting pregnant with a baby boy. Okay, if you look at all the statistics worldwide, if you look at the gender disparity at birth, look at the Western countries, for example, United States, Canada, and almost every single country in the European Union, you'll see that roughly for every 100 female births, there are 105 male births. So for the guys who are, at the rock bottom, I'm talking about the guys who are morbidly obese, couch potatoes, have Cheeto dust all over their t-shirt, the guys who are balding, the guys with no ribs, these guys will always get left out because at birth, there's always slightly more man versus woman. And that is only just one factor, okay? The problem runs much deeper. So I mentioned in the previous videos that both China and India, they have an extreme excess man crisis. In China, it's roughly estimated to be 35 to 40 million excess men. Okay, the crisis is even worse in India, where the number is estimated to be 60 to 70 million excess men. And obviously, this does not add up with the 5% disparity. It's more like 15 to 20% in these countries. And I mentioned this before. This is due to gender-selective abortion and the child infanticide. It's not just happening in China. It's not just happening in India. People still do this in Korea, in Japan, in Philippines, in Vietnam, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. It's unbelievable. All these guys are so horny. They're so lonely. They're so desperate for women. But they keep killing baby girls. Sometimes I feel like humans do deserve to go extinct. And this is also a huge problem in the Middle East. You should watch the interview conducted by Dr. Jordan Peterson with Mohammed Hassan Youssef, okay? So Mohammed Hassan Youssef, his father is one of the founders of Hamas, okay? And listen, watch the entire 2-hour interview. So much truth is being revealed. And this is one of the contributing factors why, when you see all of these Muslim migrants, when they come over to Europe and North America, what is the first phenomenon that you notice with the dramatic increase of these migrants that's coming over from Middle East and North Africa? The first phenomenon that happens is that there's a dramatic spike in women being raped and sexually assaulted. It's because there is a massive problem of excess men. And there are severe consequences in this. You want to talk about the dramatic rise of LGBTQ, right? Hassan Youssef, his father was the founder of Hamas. He was raped by members of Hamas, okay? I'm not making up propaganda. You should listen to his other interviews. Listen to some clips by some former Muslims who escaped their religion, who escaped the Middle East. They will review to you guys the chilling fact behind the rape culture in the Middle East, okay? It's not just women getting raped, okay? Because there's so much more men versus women. In many cases, it's men raping each other. The problem runs much, much deeper than this. Many people out there saying that, our society needs to ban, porn, ban OnlyFans, ban prostitution, ban strip clubs. Imagine what the West will look like If it wasn't for these things basically taming man, and imagine if these services never existed. Imagine if a guy couldn't go to the strip club, right, where he couldn't get a hooker for a couple $100s, where he couldn't subscribe to his OnlyFans model. I can guarantee you, within a few years' time, the West will turn into the parallel universe of the Middle East and North Africa. Because the reality is that women will only search for the best man. The vast majority of men, unless they can provide financially, they have zero sexual attraction for the modern woman out there. Okay, that is just a biological fact. And this extreme rape and sexual assault culture, this has extreme consequences on our society, okay? I want to talk about the dramatic rise of, the number of men that's coming out as gay, right? Ladies, okay, I want you to understand something. Men do get raped as well. It's just that this topic is extremely humiliating and embarrassing that very, very few men will actually open up about this. Especially in the United States. You guys know what's the most common form of rape by men in the United States? It's black men raping other black men in U.S. prisons. Because unfortunately, just you look at the U.S. prison, when you walk in, the vast majority of the inmates inside the U.S. prisons are young black men. And when they can't find other women inside the male prison, they end up raping each other. And many of these men, the vast majority of them are straight when they go to the jail. However, after they've been raped or sexually assaulted, and by the time they leave prison, when they come out, many of them will turn out to be gay. And this could be a form of, let's say, a post-traumatic stress disorder, where the extreme shock both physically and mentally causes a permanent hormone change in your brain and in your system. And this is not just true for men, this is also true for women. I met a lot of lesbians in my life, especially in Canada. Canada is considered to be one of the most friendly countries towards the LGBTQ. And I can guarantee you this, almost every single lesbian I met in my life, I'm talking about, the lesbian that tries to act like a dude, the one that's extremely alpha, the one that's the guy in the relationship. In almost every single one of these cases, the lesbian that's the alpha, at some point in her life, usually when she was much younger, she was unfortunately sexually assaulted by a male family member. This is how much our society has decayed. And I'm so sorry for any woman or any man that has gone through this kind of experience. I cannot imagine what kind of trauma you have to deal with. And many of these people will never recover from this kind of trauma. And these things have been allowed to happen because our justice system has allowed people to get away with it. Because, what's going to happen, for example, in Canada, there's no capital punishment. That's why I support some of the policies in countries, for example, in China, in Russia, and in Iran. Let's say if the guy is an absolute monster, right? This guy's a pedophile. He kidnaps 10 different women, rapes them, and kills all of them. How come the maximum sentence that can be given to this guy is 25 years? And in many of these cases, if they do behave well in jail, they could be out in 20 or even 15 years. The simplest method is to just simply put a bullet hole through their head, and everything is over. Stop wasting our taxpayers' money on these criminals that has committed crimes against humanity. It is the failure of our justice system that has allowed these things to happen, that has allowed all of these rapes and sexual assaults to happen. Because in so many cases, these guys, they walk away with basically nothing. For many of these guys, they can go to prison for 5, 10, or 15 years, and they walk out as a free man. Now let's bring the topic back to the X and Y chromosomes, okay? I want to mention something that's called the telomeres, okay? Do you know what these things are? So the telomeres, basically these are the tips of your X and Y chromosomes, okay? When you're first born as an infant, the telomeres are the 100% full length. And over the course of your lifetime, your telomeres, they wear down. Do you guys want to know something that's crazy? So if you're raised by a single mother, okay? By the time you hit the age of 12, your telomeres on average are 14% shorter. What does that mean, okay? See, these things they're not just simple tips, okay, not the end of your chromosomes. They're also part of your body's immune system, okay? They help you to fight diseases. They keep you healthy. And when these telomeres run out, you die. Okay, obviously this has had a dramatic effect on the Black American families, okay? What kind of a country calls themselves the best country in the world? Americans, they claim to be the freest country in the world. They claim to have all of this freedom and democracy. Have a look at this stat, okay? 24 million children in America today, okay, are being raised by single mothers. 24 million children, okay, that's 37% of the population. This is no longer a small, marginalized group of children, okay? This is why we have all of these issues in our society. Why don't you guys go ask every single one of those young black men in prison, okay? Ask every single person that's dropping out of school. Ask every single murderer, every single rapist, every single drug dealer, every single person that ran away from school, every single person that is just pure vile evil. All of these hosts on the streets, all these 304s, the woman with 200 plus body counts, woman that's doing OnlyFans, getting drilled by Dredd, by Shane Diesel, by Mandigo. Just simply ask all of these people one simple question, okay? Were you raised by a single mother? I'm not saying that I have a hatred towards single mothers, but I'm just saying that this is the root cause there. As I mentioned, okay, being raised by a single mother, it causes permanent biological changes to both your X and your Y chromosomes, okay? And it's because of things like this. Women who are raised up by single mothers on average, typically they hit puberty 1 year earlier versus other girls who are raised in a nuclear two-parent household family. And then when a woman hits puberty at an extremely young age, do you know what happens then? This leads to extreme sexual promiscuity from a very early age on. I mentioned before, okay, I grew up without a mother, I grew up without a father, okay? I was raised by my grandmother until I was 12. And then after I came to Canada, I was kicked out by my dad and my stepmom, okay? I basically became homeless. I've been living by myself since I was 15, okay? I've been living on my own for the past 16 years now. When you grow up without one parent, on average, your lifespan will be 4 years shorter. When you grow up without either parents, on average, you will live 8 years shorter. Also, just the fact that, women on average typically live anywhere between 4 to 5 years longer than men. And I'm probably not going to live very long. Growing up in a single parent household will cause permanent biological changes to your body. Okay, very important. This actually alters your chromosomes. You can look up this study. You don't think this altering of the chromosomes has a direct link to the dramatic increase in the number of people that's coming out as transgender, as queer, and as non-binary? All of this stuff is happening in our society because the structure of the nuclear family has completely broken down. Okay, let's look at what's happening overseas on the other side of the world. Let's talk about foreign European and North American passport bureaus and sexpats. I have to keep bringing back this point. Women are born into this world with values, okay? For example, let's say 200 years ago, okay, if you're just a normal average Thai girl, if you were born in Bangkok or Pattaya or Chiang Mai, right, you're probably going to marry a local Thai man that also grew up in the same city. However, we're living in the 21st century with globalization and modern technology. Any average Thai girl can find a American or European passport bureau. That guy can simply just hop onto a plane, book a flight to Pattaya, where he will marry this local Thai girl, and he will provide for her financially. I'm not talking about just a situationship or a summer fling. I'm talking about some passport bros. They will actually settle down in Asia, where he will marry the local Asian woman, where he will buy a house for her, where he will buy a car for her, where they will raise children, and where he pays 100% of the bills, okay? This is the privilege that a woman can have in this world. A man simply doesn't have this kind of privilege. For example, you want to talk about transgender, okay? Just look at what's happening in Asia. For example, in Thailand, there are millions of ladyboys, okay? I've been to Thailand twice personally myself. I've been to those LGBTQ drag shows. They call the Tiffany show or a cabaret show, okay? I've seen some crazy stuff that go down. But one thing have you guys noticed is that 99% of the time, it's a biological man. It's a dude with XY chromosomes. It's these guys who are cutting off their balls and becoming ladyboys. You never hear someone who is a boy lady. Let's say someone who was born as a Thai woman who transitions to become a Thai man. Why do you guys think that is? An average Thai girl nowadays can easily find a passport bureau, but this choice is not available for these local Thai men. And remember, Thailand is a third world country, okay? You don't see some super rich white businesswoman from New York that would fly to Thailand to become a passport sister. So many of these guys, they're left with no choice. So many of their local women are taken. They're simply not able to find any partners. There's not a lot of good paying jobs available in Thailand. So many of these young Thai men, they will rather choose to get plastic surgery and the hormone replacement therapy, and also get their bottom surgery to get gender affirming care, to cut their penis off, to have a doctor drill a hole down there so they have a neo vagina instead. And they will start performing and doing sex work as a lady boy just so that they can make some cash. That is the reality for many average Thai men. So for the next part, let's shift over to China, okay? I mentioned that the infamous dowry or 彩礼. So this dowry is a Chinese tradition, has existed for thousands of years, okay? Historically, woman has never ever married down. Woman only marries up. I mentioned before, the average price in 2024 today in China is about 200,000 yuan or $28,000 US. And this kind of system has obviously severe consequences. This means that the rich, the powerful, and the wealthy, they can buy an unlimited number of wives and concubines. And the guys who are broke or even middle class and making average income, these men will simply never be able to find any partners. Because unless you can come up with the payment for the dowry, okay, no woman will marry you. This has been true for thousands of years. And it is because of these traditions throughout history, very small percentage of men actually got to reproduce. So anytime this kind of practice went on for a really long time, okay, it produced a system where millions of Chinese men, they become involuntarily celibate, okay, they become cold, they become rageful. And they say that, oh, look, all these rich and wealthy, okay, they're buying up all of these women. All of us normal peasants, we're left with nothing. So they start a massive bloody rebellion. Have you guys heard of the Yellow Turban Rebellion during the Three Kingdoms? Millions of people died. Have you guys heard of the Anlushan Rebellion in China during the Tang Dynasty? That killed upwards of 36 million people. Have you guys heard of the Taiping Rebellion in China during China's century of humiliation? That killed anywhere between 20 to 30 million people. See, women will never understand this. It's just like, for example, someone like me, I will never know what it's like to give birth. I will never know what it's like to menstruate. And it is simply because, women don't have a testosterone in their body. They don't understand the concept, okay? A man's hormone, his sex drive, okay, his biological instinct to find a intimate partner, to find a wife, to have children, to pass down his bloodline. This kind of a hormone, this kind of sex drive in his body, this will drive men to commit unspeakable crimes against humanity. And what happens during times of war? Almost every single soldier that dies on the battlefield, I'm talking about 99.9% of the cases, okay, all of the deaths are men. And as a man, if you end up on the losing side, if you're not killed during battle, what happens? Okay, the opposition, they come into your village, they take all your women, and all the men become enslaved. You get your balls and your penis cut off, you become a Chinese eunuch. During the Ming Dynasty, the second last dynasty of China, upwards of 1 million Chinese eunuchs served in the imperial palace. That's just one dynasty. You think about China's 5,000-year history. Think about how many men have had their penis cut off or how many men have died in wars. And these men were necessary sacrifices because, after millions of men died during a war, during a rebellion, and another batch of millions that become slaves and become eunuchs, this means that there's a massive excess of women. So even with the top man taking in, 100, 500, 2,000 concubines, there were still enough women to pass around for all the men that remained. And whenever there's a society where almost every single man can find a woman to procreate with, to start a family, this brings peace and stability to the society. You see, this is a vicious cycle. This is a circle of life. So you have excess men, not enough women, okay? The men get pissed, they become incels, they start a massive rebellion. Then millions of men will get killed. Then you have a case where you have a very few men and a large number of excess women. Now there's enough women to be shared with everybody. You have peace and stability. See, this is the vicious circle of life. I'm sure some of you guys are thinking at this point, okay, this example is ridiculous. So let's shift the timeline forward, okay, to the Soviet Union. What happened to the Soviet Union during World War II? Remember, they had the highest number of casualties. 26.6 million people died. That's 14% of their population. I'm sure many of you guys know the stories about Operation Barbarossa. Then 3 years later, Operation Bagration, the Battle of Stalingrad, the Siege of Leningrad, the breadbasket of Bolshevism. Think about it. Out of the 26.6 million people that died, I would say probably 20 million were men. So in modern Russia and in all the former Soviet satellite states, that's why they don't push for feminism, because there's a massive shortage of men. And this is also a key reason why their population is constantly shrinking, because they've caused this massive demographic pyramid bottleneck. And basically, there's no way for them to reverse this trend. In countries like Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, or Belarus, sometimes if you travel to one of the smaller villages with 10,000 people, let's say, it's very normal to see an older babushka that has been single all of her life, that she's never been married or never had a relationship or never bared any children. This is because all of the men have been killed during the war. This is how brutal wars are. And let's bring this topic back to China. Okay, I mentioned this before. My maternal grandfather, okay, he was completely broke. He had no money. He's 5'4", and he also walks with a limp. Think about this, okay? 5'4", completely broke, no house, no car, walks with a broken leg. And he got to marry my grandmother. Okay, my grandmother married him when she was an 18-year-old virgin, and my grandmother died with a body count of 1. Imagine this happening in 2024. You'd be living in a fantasy land. Why was it so easy for these Chinese men to get a woman back in the day? Okay, think about what happened to China during World War II, the Sino-Japanese War. This actually lasted for 14 long years. During the Sino-Japanese War, China lost anywhere between 15 to 20 million people. And you have to remember, the Sino-Japanese War was sandwiched in between the Chinese Civil War, which went on from 1927 to 1949, which is still not over, by the way. So during China's own civil war, China also lost 7.5 million people. So that is upwards of 27.5 million people that died during those 22 years. It's interesting during this time period that nobody ever tried to be a feminist in China. You notice how right now in Ukraine, no woman wants to be a feminist and go to the front lines. I find that to be quite interesting. But think about the 27.5 million people that died. I would say at least 20 million are men. You see, this created a demographic shift. Let's say China back in 1950. There was probably an excess of at least anywhere between 15 to 20 million women because all the young men had been killed. So whatever man that was left that survived the Chinese Civil War and the Sino-Japanese War, there was enough women to be passed around with all of these Chinese peasants. That's why China's population grew so fast, because every single man could find a partner. Now let's shift the topic back west. To people say, oh, what about a country like the United States? They didn't suffer too many casualties during World War II, right? United States lost roughly 420,000 people. But see, here's the thing, okay? I mentioned before, way back then, universities, they used to be men's space. And all the workplaces, this used to be a man's space, right? Almost all the CEOs, almost all the millionaires, almost all the engineers, almost all the doctors, all the government jobs, all the STEM fields, almost every single job that paid a really good salary, that could provide you income, that can support the entire family, that allowed you to get a wife and to raise a family. So back then in the United States, when all of the men had the good paying jobs, almost every single man back then could find a wife. But that is simply no longer the case today. You're looking at a system where over 60% of the college and university graduates are women now, and the women are occupying the majority of the white-collar jobs. And this creates a system where some people call it the high heels effect, where a woman would only marry up. And we have basically the fall of man and the fall of the nuclear family. Now, the final chapter of this video, let's talk about the animal world. You see, some things never change, even through millions of years of evolution. For example, the vast majority of animals, okay, they're not monogamous. By monogamous, I mean one partner for life. One of the few exceptions, for example, are wolves. For example, if the alpha wolf in the pack, if the alpha gets injured, the alpha female will leave the pack behind. The pack will choose a new alpha, but the alpha female will choose to leave the pack. It will stay by the side of the injured alpha male all the way until death. But that's just a rare exception. For example, if you look at, let's say, bisons, okay? Alpha bison can mate with up to 100 female bisons, okay? But here's the thing, if an alpha bison can mate with 100 other female bisons, that means that there will be 99 other bisons who are average, who are not alphas. All of these bisons will simply die alone. And this kind of biological behavior has survived millions of years of evolution and is still very much present in modern women today. Listen, to all the folks out there, women only want the best. They only want the alpha. They only want the top G. Okay, if you want to get yourself a beautiful woman, you have to become the best. That is the only option. So I'm sure most of you guys, at some point you've watched documentaries from, let's say, the National Geographic. I'm sure many of you guys watch Animal Planet, and you see the behavior of these animals. You see so many of these animals. The males would fight each other to death just for the right to procreate. And you guys want to know something incredible that happens in the animal kingdom? For example, in Tanzania, on the plains of the Serengeti, You have all these lions, hyenas, hippos, crocodiles, jaguars, okay, cheetahs, and many of these animals are vicious towards each other. So many of these animals, they will fight to the death just so that they don't go to sleep hungry. There's only one exception on the plains of the Serengeti where you will find peace. This happens when an elephant dies. That's when you see the lions and the hyenas, the cheetahs, the vultures, the jackals, the foxes, they all come together. They all sit down beside each other, where each pack of animal takes their share of the dead elephant's meat. Because this is one of the only times on the Serengeti where there's finally enough food for everybody. So other animals, they don't have to fight to the death over it. Humans are very much the same way today. These males, they fight each other to the death to become the alpha, so they have the chance to procreate. I want to talk about this bird, the albatross. Okay, you can find these birds on the South Georgia island. Okay, this is an incredible story because almost all of these animals on the South Georgia island, they were all nearly hunted to extinction. However, today this island has become a safe haven for all of these animals to gather here. So these albatrosses, okay, they can live for up to 60 years. So they start mating at roughly the age of 10. And these birds are also monogamous. They only choose one partner for life. It's something that's very unfortunate. So their diet consists mostly of fish. Every time the female goes out to the open waters to hunt, it's extremely unfortunate and tragic. So many of these females, they get caught by these fish net. So many of these females get killed while they're hunting for food. So in the local albatross population, there's a massive gender disparity. There are way more male albatrosses versus female albatross. And do you guys know what kind of a behavior shift and pattern this has caused in the local albatross population? Many of these male birds are turning gay. No, I'm 100% serious. You can look up these videos. You can look up their mating rituals. You can look up how these males are forming a pair and they're forming a bond with each other. And many of these experts and scientists are saying that it's because these males, they go through stages of extreme loneliness and depression. Because think about it, they're alive for 60 years. That's almost as long as the average human lifespan. And with all of these excess males in the albatross population, they simply don't have a choice. So instead of dying alone, many of these albatrosses are simply choosing to become gay. And just like what I mentioned at the start of this video, in this world, due to the phenomenon of the Y sperm that is more likely to fertilize the X egg, leading to the birth of a baby boy, and also gender-selective abortion and child infanticide being practiced by most of the world. So there's simply way more man versus woman. Many of these men simply don't have a choice, and that's why we see this dramatic rise of men just coming out as gay and also transgender. I want to talk more about this topic, but this video is already getting way too long. So I'm going to stop the video here. I hope I was able to get my point across to you guys clearly. I want to describe, the vicious circle of life to you guys. So if this video was too much for you, don't worry. This will be my longest upload this month. I got 13 videos that is scheduled to be released this month during Pride Month, so I'll have a lot of information to cover. The next couple of videos to be released next week will be much shorter. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification button. And I will see you guys next week.
I'll never let you in. Easier to break it off best friends. I don't really understand myself. I don't really understand, need help. I don't wanna